Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser, who serves as the Barrett Principal Education Conductor and Community Ambassador of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Aaron, it's great to be here with you.
So it's so great to talk to you. And not only do you serve these roles with the TSO, you're also the artist in residence and community ambassador of Symphony Nova Scotia. You also serve as the principal conductor of engagement and education at the San Francisco Symphony and at the National Arts Center Orchestra. You're the principal youth conductor and creative partner. So to say the least, you've got a little bit going on. But I'm so excited to talk to you because, of course, right, all of these roles give you an extraordinary perspective on things. And especially I'd like to, talk about some of this work at the TSO that you're doing in education, and some new formats, things like that. But just before that, I was curious because there are so many in our audience, especially in the arts, who have to balance different roles at potentially different institutions. And I'm just wondering, is there an approach that you use, or any best practices for yourself that enable you to have such a breadth of work that you do, but manage all of those responsibilities?
Sure. At the end of the day, as a conductor, you're only as good as your next rehearsal. So the priority is time for the composer and prioritizing that as a conductor. That's the priority. Making sure that I know the music to the best of my ability. So that is in my day, the best part of my, the best part of my energy when I'm the freshest, that always goes to score study first as a conductor. That's the priority. And then I do have a day that I block off where I have a no meeting day where it's just me working without interruptions. Like finding spaces where you can limit interruptions is really, really, really important, where you can just be focused on the work that you have. So I guess those two things, I would say keeping the priority, and then having time where you can be uninterrupted to work and focus are really, really important. So that sort of is a side at, I mean, that might not be, oh, I do this, I do this. No, those are the two main things. And then what that looks like is different. But the main thing as a conduct, it's like keeping the main thing, and then everything else will.
And I love that compartmentalizing and how critically important it sounds like that is, especially when you're doing that core, kind of artistic preparation work.
It is. Because every time you shift from one activity to another, every time you're distracted, there's a mental loss of energy that goes as you shift tasks. So trying to limit the amount of time that you're shifting tasks. I'm getting better at it, right? But that's really important to just have that focus time and yeah, to keep the main thing the main thing.
Awesome, awesome. So at the Toronto Symphony, at the TSO, there's this broad, wonderful spectrum of work that you're doing in education, in community engagement. And so I was curious, kind of, right, one of these things you're kind of doing different concerts or different communities, and just wondering what does that look like? And as you kind of architect that, how are you going about the strategy of that?
Right. So, in car design, what car designers are doing these days, like Volkswagen, for example, they have like one platform. And on that one platform, they build the Golf, they build the Jetta, they build the Tiguan. They can expand it, they can change it, but they have one platform for three or four different cars. So what we've done between the Toronto Symphony Orchestra and the National Arts Center Orchestra is build a platform concert. And from that concert, we derive a pops, a family, and an education. We modify it, right? So that's sort of the underlying architecture of how we're thinking about these things, making them workable for a large number of orchestras. So then that music can be used in different places. So underneath, right, it's like that's sort of how we're thinking about like replicability across Canada when we create a program. So that's the form of the program. right? It's this platform that can be modified depending on what you need it for. But the content is what's very interesting. The content is specific to different communities. So in Toronto, there's a huge there's a huge Indian population and music of the of Southeast Asia. There's a huge Caribbean population, right? So what we're doing is making concerts that will reach out to those people. So the first year we did a reggae concert with Jamila, and she's a singer from Nova Scotia who sang with the Wailers, Bob Marley's Wailers. What was really wonderful was having the orchestra learn about reggae performance practice, right? And then doing a full length evening concert in pops and then making a smaller version that was for students and then putting that online with curriculum so kids are learning about reggae. Last year we did Bhangra, the music of India, and we had students learning about it. We had drummers, we had dancers, we had all of this sort of stuff, all in education modules. And then it also is a pops concert that I'm doing out in Windsor later in the year, right? So taking that structure and modifying it, but filling the content with different things. This year we're doing Calypso, right? So this concert has served as a pops concert. It served as an education concert, as a family concert, served as a run out concert to communities, to areas in the Greater Toronto area where those communities are centrally located, right? So that we can perform like sort of like a precision attack almost of music. Like, this is your music, we're gonna do it for you, done in conjunction with artists that are experts in that field, right? So we're learning from those artists. Maritime Bhangra worked with us, Jamila worked with us. This year Pan Fantasy is working with us, learning from those artists about their music, incorporating it into orchestra, performing a sort of marriage of the two, and then taking it to them, right? So that's one of the it's successful ventures that we've had over the past couple of years at the Toronto Symphony.
I love that, and especially the engagement of artists who've been embedded in a particular genre, and how you were talking about learning from them, and that must I bring an authenticity to the performance and to the work, and connection with these audiences that you truly are engaging.
There's a principle in that a lot of us in Canada have been thinking about in terms of working with Indigenous peoples. There's a lot in the news about some of the atrocities that have happened to the Indigenous people in Canada. So people would want to work with an Indigenous group or do art with them, and would sort of like co-opt their entire existence or their way of making art into like our way of doing it. And there's a phrase that I often think about, which is nothing about us without us. So, it's sort of like if I was, making somebody's soup recipe and I'm okay, here's your recipe. I'm gonna make soup for you. I'm gonna make your soup for you. Along the way, I'm not just gonna get the recipe. Along the way, is this the right amount of salt? Am I doing this? Am I stirring? Am I folding in the cheese right? Am I doing all this correctly? So nothing about us without us. And that goes for, I'm of Caribbean descent, Trinidad and Jamaica, but I'm still asking other Trinidadians and other Jamaicans about the reggae program, about the Calypso program, right? I worked with a number of different people who were collaborating with us on the Bhangra program for the Indian music to make sure I got it right. And I said, I love it, but I don't know, like, what are the big hits? What are the pieces that I need to include? And then when we put on the concert and you see people in turbans and and you're thinking, oh my gosh, like, did I do this right? Like, am I doing your music okay? And afterwards you go to talk to the audience and people are just like, oh, I never thought I'd hear an orchestra play Terry Arbolda. I never thought I would hear like Malkit Singh performed by an orchestra. And you feel like, okay, we've done it. But that's because we were consulting all the way along with the people who are primarily affected, right?
Right.
Same thing for an education concert. It's like if you have a new idea, are you asking students about is this good along the way? Like, is this interesting?
Right.
Do you enjoy this? Are you consulting with the people that you're actually performing for?
Engaging with.
That's very important.
It's just amazing, and I literally can visualize that impact that you and the orchestra are having. And you mentioned kind of also flipping to educational programming. Are there any kind of different, and obviously many in our audience are doing a variety of different educational programming in their communities. Are there any kind of new formats or things like that that you're exploring, or things that you found have really been working in terms of formats with your educational programming?
There are two things that we've done over the past couple of years that have been interesting and I think innovative. And one is a documentary style concert, and the second is an audience participation concert. The documentary style concert was called Moments, and it tackled this problem. If you go to an average school and ask them students, what are the names of some of the main players in this city's baseball team or hockey team or basketball. They'd be able to list off those players and they understand what those players do because they played basketball, they've played hockey, they've played tennis, whatever. I don't sport, so I don't know. But they would know. And you ask them, what's the name of the principal oboe of your orchestra? What's the name of the principal timpani? And they have no clue. So how do you help students bridge that gap? So what we decided to do was a concert called Moments. And the concert centered around the experience of musicians on stage and how that experience of overcoming challenges and difficult moments, what we as musicians do, can help students in their regular lives. So there were three main soloists in the concert from the orchestra. And before each soloist in the orchestra played their piece, we did a mini 90-second documentary on them where they got to see Eric Abramovitz, principal clarinet, in his house, practicing the piece of music, saying, here's how I started clarinet. Here's the piece I'm going to play for you. Here's the hardest part. Here's how I'm practicing. Here's what makes me nervous. This is the part I'm nervous about. This is what it sounds like when I make a mistake. I'm Eric Abramovitz. This is my moment. And then Eric comes out on stage in his tux to play the piece. They know the hard part. They've seen him practice. They can hear it coming. Now he's about to play it. Is he going to make it? Is he going to do it? Did he get over that F sharp major arpeggio? He did. Yeah. Right? They're relating on a personal level to the music. We did that with three, right? And we weren't ready for the response after the video. We thought, okay, here's the video. When the person came out, when he came out the very first time, they went wild. They went wild. They're like, there he is. We know him. We love him. They were excited, right? So that from taking the idea of like having these mini documentary moments that allow people to have an inside look into the person's life and then see that person come out on stage. And now it's not just like, oh, here's, here's Scaramouche. Sorry, Scaramouche is for saxophone I'm playing by. Here's Scaramouche, right? No, it's like Eric. Eric is going to do it. This is Eric's hard part. And they're emotionally
and they get a view and like you were saying, emotionally invested in them, in their story. I
Exactly.
love that. That is phenomenal. You mentioned that, and was there another format that you're exploring within education?
Yes, this is coming up in 2 weeks, and this concert is based on it's not based on, but it was inspired by a book by Johann Hari called Stolen Focus: How We Have Lost Our Focus, right? And we know that music is about, you have to focus to be a musician. So this concert is going to be a focus workout for the students that come. They're going to be challenged to focus on themselves, focus on their breathing, focus on particular musicians, focus on working together as an audience creating music, focus on listening and the different areas of a room that we can listen to, focus on, did I say intonation? Focus on being together, making music together. So we have a bunch of different challenges. For example, teaching them sharp and flat intonation and getting them to, indicate which one is which. Doing box breathing during Bach, counting the number of times in Britain's Bourrée Classique, one instrument interrupts another. It's going to be a focus workout. It's going to be lots and lots of fun. There's video, there's games, for every piece, there's something totally different that they're going to be doing, like, clapping along to the ending of Sibelius 5. I don't know how it's going to go. This is the thing. In a concert, do you ever structure moments where there is controlled chaos, where you don't know how it's going to go, where what the audience does affects what the musicians do on stage? How can we safely incorporate in orchestra moments of contingency, this art form that is so structured? How can we have those moments where it's like, okay, something's going to happen, or even like, this might work, this might not work, we don't know. There are some things in the concert I know are going to work. I know this is going to be slam dunk. There are other ones where it's like, kind of depends on my delivery, kind of depends on the mood. We'll see. That makes it interesting, not only for the audience, also for the players on stage. And when they're interested, that comes through the instruments and that affects the people in the audience. It's a positive feedback loop,
It's,
right? So that's, it's a risk. I'll let you know,
yeah.
let you know how it goes. But
Well,
because
these are
there's a lot happening.
totally. These are amazing. And I love these innovations. And I think I can just literally visualize and see that impact, especially for young people. So
Well,
unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, your energy is just totally infectious. Like, I mean, it's so amazing. And it comes through here on the show, but there has to be some days where there are obstacles, right? Or challenges that might seem impossible to overcome. Just wondering, as a leader, is there anything you can share with our audience about what you do to get past those moments or to get through when it's one of those tough times?
Yes, it's the leader's job to inspire themselves. So you have to know what are the things that inspire you. Where are the places that you need to go to be inspired? What do you need to do to be inspired? Who do you need to be with? When are the times you're going to feel the least inspired? For me, February and March, game over. Those are my worst months. I know that. So I send myself email messages like now for February and March. It's all you're in February. This is why you feel this way, right? You have to know yourself and take the time to be by yourself. Like Brahms used to go on these long, long, long walks. Like just turn off everything, be by yourself, get to know yourself, because it's ultimately our job to inspire ourselves before we try to inspire anybody else. So take that job as priority number one, because you're the only person who can really inspire yourself by putting yourself in those places and situations that will lead to your being revitalized.
Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing, for the TSO, for all of the other wonderful institutions and orchestras you're involved with. Thank you for everything you're doing in all of these communities. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you to the whole TSO team that is working on all this stuff in the National Arts Center Orchestra as well too. Could not do it without an amazing team of people who are yes, yes, yes motivated to do all this stuff. So thank you. And thanks, Aaron, for having me on the show.
Thanks so much.